All right, everyone. I should be live. And of course, if you're here on replay crew, I probably am. And thank you for being awesome. But welcome to another Monday Night Live stream where we discuss things that are happening. Honestly, there's only one day left until the election. And well, that's just kind of wild, really, isn't it? So we're going to discuss some things surrounding the election and everything else, security measures and things of that nature taking place right now. We're going to talk about some of the world events, but mostly we're going to have a conversation about expectations and just where we stand currently. And I hope that all of you are ready for tomorrow to have possible surprises and maybe even find yourself in a situation where you may need to have a change of plans, I'll just say. So if that's what happens, make sure you're prepared and ready to go, and that we all do our best to stay vigilant and aware and understand that there are threats out there, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So good to see everybody. I see 5x5s coming in, which means I sound and look good. And I don't know if I personally look good, but at least the camera feed does. And Harbor Prepper says so that's a good thing. Tommy D with the 5x5 as well. David Baise, good to see you. Hello there. And of course, Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. Thanks to them, I can do live streams like this one. And of course, give you information to help your preparedness become a little bit more strategic while also working with Midway to provide you with pretty high quality equipment. So big thanks to them for always supporting what I do. I really appreciate their partnership. So Bakari Akil, what's up? How you doing? See you. Glad you're here. We also have Bogaloo. You can that psyop again. Oh, Bogaloo, you're one of the ones. I see you here. Yeah, well, I know that video that posted earlier today was going to create somewhat of a let's just say, contentious flavor. But it's just my opinion and me being honest and transparent with everybody about how I feel and exactly what I think needs to happen regarding participation. So, and this is coming from somebody who's been down many different paths and has concluded that at this current point in time, we have very limited options about how to change our current trajectory, which, by the way, is negative at you can't look at the world and our country and the economy and everything else in mind and understand that things haven't improved. In fact, they've gotten much worse. Then my only logical thought process from there is to maybe try something else. So good to see that. I see Shed Al here with the super chat. Thank you so much. Mike H, audio is intermittently garbled. Well, hopefully I can address that. Maybe my microphone just wasn't quite where it needed to be. Give me a second. Audio is a 2.5 now. I was having issues with my microphone showing up originally, and now it showed up, but possibly not working properly. Let me know if you can hear it. 1 second. Am I still live in the sense of audio? If you can hear it, it sounds better. Please let me know. And yes, I am going to talk about that, William Jones, tonight. The drone attack situation is interesting, let's just say. And I do have some ideas about that. Bakari comes back in with the 5x5 better now. Okay, I just shut the mic off and restarted it. So hopefully that fixes things. Okay, so let's talk about, and I do want to say I appreciate all of you, and I'm glad you're here tonight. And here we are. We meet, right? And I will also say, just to preface this, I 100% literally expected to see something more explosive occur before tomorrow. And I just find it to be basically surprising that we've made it here in a relatively peaceful manner in the sense of how things are going. Of course, we've seen assassination attempts, we've seen escalations when it comes to global conflict and things of that nature. But all in all, things have been relatively calm, which does have me a little concerned, and that's why I also added the "It's real quiet" to the title tonight because it is very quiet, isn't it? So this is what everyone was talking about. I want to touch on this quickly, but not really spend a lot of time on it. FBI thwarts man's alleged plan to attack Nashville power grid with explosive-laden drone. This is literally from today. A Columbia, Tennessee man allegedly attempted to fly a drone packed with explosives into an energy facility before the FBI stopped him from destroying the critical infrastructure, according to the Department of Justice. Now, as we go through this story, I just want everyone to kind of keep in mind certain talking points as well as the concept of trying to increase credibility as well as public trust in certain entities. Okay. In a press release, the DOJ said 24-year-old Skylar Philippi was arrested and charged with the attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction and attempted destruction of an energy facility. As charged, Skylar Philippi believed he was moments away from launching an attack on a Nashville energy facility to further his violent white supremacist ideology. But the FBI had already compromised his plot, Attorney General Merrick B. Garland said. This case serves as yet another warning to those seeking to sow violence and chaos in the name of hatred by attacking our country's critical infrastructure. The Justice Department will find you, we will disrupt your plot, and we will hold you accountable. Now, here are some of the pictures that were taken with FBI undercover agent. So that's interesting, isn't it? That they were at this point or this stage of the game being like, hey, look at us doing the things, and P.S. I'm FBI, right? So here's the thing. The FBI was embedded. Law enforcement was very aware of this person and their activities, clearly, because they're sitting here taking pictures with each other. And so there really doesn't seem to me like there was a real threat of this actually going off because of their infiltration by the FBI and the fact that law enforcement was on top of it. But you also have to keep in mind that this is a great way for the FBI to, like I said, increase their credibility and increase public trust right before an election period. Especially because of the way they're describing this thing and the fact of the matter, the people involved are clearly vitriolic people that basically provoke an emotional response from a large portion of the country, right? So this person is a white supremacist and, clearly a domestic terrorist, and all the things that they use to further justify additional authoritarianism as time goes by. Right. So just keep that in mind. Yes, I'm glad this was stopped. And yes, it's a good thing that the FBI took care of that, of course. We don't want to see critical infrastructure be attacked by anybody. But it does seem like one of those things where there is going to be a reason for why it's being so heavily covered. Okay. So moving on. Better late than never. I agree, Gregor Zamina. Good to see you. Michael D223 says PSYOP. That's the word of the day of my explanation about blackpilling here previously, and how some people were upset about it because instead of going further than the initial surface level of understanding that ideology, they have an emotional response to, I don't know, the concept of ideology being attacked or possibly inorganically created. And I can say that without any reservation because I was blackpilled as well, so it's fine. Now, moving forward, let's talk about how they're getting ready for the election tomorrow. And this just gives you kind of a preview as to how some of the, let's just say, hive mind thought process works when it comes to their expectations of unrest and escalation and everything else. Okay? So this is from earlier today. New security fences seen around key DC sites ahead of Election Day. And in case you guys don't know, right before everything started, I said hi to Replay Crew, but I don't believe we were live quite yet. So they'll see that on replay, but you guys didn't see it. So I just wanted to make sure that if you are usually a Replay Crew, I still said hello to you. Okay. Federal government officials and local police are ramping up security measures at key locations across Washington, D.C. and Florida ahead of Tuesday's election, which is tomorrow, by the way. Like, we're here, which is just almost surreal, isn't it? On Sunday, crews were seen working on fencing off the Naval Observatory, where Vice President Kamala Harris lives. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser told Fox 5 that the district has been preparing for the election for months, and heightened security measures will be in place throughout the inauguration in January, which we will talk about that as well. That tomorrow, sure, big day, big deal, big target when it comes to this environment, but also starts a very tumultuous period of time based on the results, based on contention, based on just the overall feeling of the American population. The expectation is that the time period between the election and the certification of the election is not going to be very calm. But hey, leading up to the election was much calmer than I expected too. So keep that in mind as well. Now, DC Police Department has put out a traffic notice on social media ahead of Harris's election night party at Howard University. At street closures, no parking zones, and transit detours will be back. The U.S. Secret Service is working closely with our federal, state, and local partners in Washington, D.C. and Palm Beach County, Florida, to ensure the heightened levels of safety and security this election day. Emailed statement to Fox News Digital from the U.S. Secret Service reads, in the coming days, fencing and other physical public safety measures will be installed around the Naval Observatory, White House, and the Palm Beach County Convention Center. These enhancements are not in response to any specific issue, but are part of wide-ranging public safety preparations for Tuesday's election. And it is kind of interesting that we are in a period of time where the necessity to set up fencing around the White House is required for an election, right? And of course, yes, things are contentious. Yes, tensions are high, and there's a lot of reasons to believe there could be security issues, of course. But it is somewhat dystopian to see all of this happening just because we're voting, right? And a lot of people will actually go ahead and put their fingers at the preparedness community. I've gotten a lot of flack on a recent video that really took off for some reason. I guess it was a decent video. It was my video about 10 things to do to get prepared for the election, right? And they were very practical things. It was like pay your bills a little early, right? So nothing crazy. But there was a lot of comments and a lot of people on there because it must have been exposed to the wider audience, thanks to YouTube, because you get a lot of views. I'm almost 250,000 now. But regardless, there was a lot of comments there. Like, what's with you people? What are you worried about? Or what's the like? What would you? Oh, the transmission's bad once again. Here we are. Okay, hold on. Try some. Give me 1 minute. I will do something here. Do something. Is this better? If audio is now better, can you please let me know? Because I did just switch to a different microphone. Not as good. It's not the one I like to use. Sounds better. If it does, rather you get a better reception here. No, it's not better. Okay. Why? It's a completely different microphone, right? Okay. So it could be the connection rather than worse. Okay. Let's get back to better microphone. And of course, this would happen tonight. I wonder why. All right. Okay. Should be better now. Please let me know if it's better. I'm trying my best here. I guess I'm not a technological wizard, but I am somebody who's willing to. Yeah, Eagle Claw thinks that I'm being screwed with right now. Sound is fine here, says situation normal. They're on to you, MP. I know. I made some egregious mistakes in the last video, according to those who would have the power to disrupt me, right? Man, I will tell you guys, okay, it's better. Good. Now that we're getting better. I will say it is interesting when you tell people in the beginning of a video to make sure to watch a video before reacting to it viscerally, and then they don't listen and then they react to it viscerally. It kind of shows you what to expect from people in any situation, right? Like get the full message before you make a decision on anything, right? So, sounds better now. Good. Let's keep rolling. So, what I was trying to say before, though, is that this is very dystopian to see all this happening just because we're voting here in this country. And of course, we have businesses boarding up, fences going up. And it's just kind of the way things are. Here it says, I mean, it's sad it has to come to that. DC resident Lucas Orgelis told Fox 5 about the fences and boarded up windows. I understand why store owners, especially local businesses, would want to do that. Even outside of the election, there have been other instances where they should have boarded and they didn't. It's sad. It's the reality. But I hope that this time it's just a precautionary measure. Nothing happens, and then yeah. And I think that's how most people would feel, and that's reasonable, right? Like, I don't wish that we had to see our capital all boarded up and fenced up because of just having a vote. But there's where we are. Okay. Let's see. I got that John B. Wells luck, says Mikey. Okay. So I did see a couple super chats come through. I just want to touch on those real quick. Rob Snelly, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Watching Time Cop 1994 because we used to laugh at the presidency costing a couple of $billion. Now, it's been a long time since I saw Time Cop, but if I recall correctly, is that Jean-Claude Van Damme? I'm pretty sure it is, but I might be wrong. MP Audio Zucchini Choppy Choppy, thanks for the heads up on that law of aluminium. Top 3 preps before the election. Cookie Monster says cookies and then more cookies. So, and I mean, who can really argue that? Oh, and then more cookies. Thank you, Cookie Monster. Let's see here. So, we also have additional security precautions being taken as well, which are a little bit more extreme even than just fences and boarding up windows. So I find that to be interesting too. And this just goes to show you how concerned law enforcement and everyone else is about the potential for unrest and other risks during this time. Panic buttons, drones, snipers among plans to guard a high-risk election, right? So this article came out yesterday, just so you're aware. Eager to reassure nervous Americans that their votes will be protected, authorities are touting unprecedented state security plans designed to withstand violence and other nightmare scenarios on election day and in a potentially uncertain aftermath. Throughout the country, local officials are taking elaborate measures to fortify election-related sites, including plans for snipers on a rooftop to protect a key vote-counting headquarters, panic buttons for election workers, and surveillance drones buzzing overhead. I mean, this is going to be extremely dystopian, futuristic in the sense of almost like a 1984, some kind of style of dystopian fiction that we've ever seen in the sense of trying to secure an election. I mean, like imagine you're standing in the lines at the polls tomorrow, and there's drones flying over your head. You see snipers on the roof. They have all these weird panic buttons hanging from every poll worker's neck, right? Like it's pretty wild, in all honesty, and it's concerning because they'll say that you can't wear political paraphernalia, right, when you're going to vote because it could create a disruption or who knows what. But then they'll have you vote under sniper rifles and drones, right? So it's just a wild time that we're in. Law enforcement agencies are keeping first responders on standby and flooding the streets with extra patrol officers. At least 2 states, Nevada and Washington, have activated the National Guard in case of unrest. Arizona's Secretary of State, in charge of certifying statewide results, has said he wears a bulletproof vest in case of attack. I mean, people are concerned, extremely concerned, okay? Political analysts and pro-democracy groups see 2 main takeaways from the extraordinary effort to defend the vote. The first is that Americans should have high confidence that casting a ballot is safe and that the system will hold because of extra guardrails added since the chaotic fallout of Donald Trump's attempts to overturn his defeat in 2020. The second is that it shouldn't have to be this way. There is clear and present danger, but there's also, frankly, substantial vigilance and substantial protections that are in place. Damon Hewitt, executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, told reporters in a briefing. I hope that makes the point pretty strong for you, right? They're clearly concerned about things happening, but the media is taking it in a way that it can only blame one particular group, as usual. He added, however, that it shouldn't take this much, and we darn sure shouldn't normalize any of it. Analysts say the biggest threat is posed by the right-wing election denial movement that emerged in 2020 with Trump's refusal to accept his loss to Joe Biden. His promotion of conspiracy theories related to the vote drew thousands to the streets, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We know all of that. Now, here's something that you have to keep in mind. Okay, they're saying this is the biggest threat, right? When we know we have Iranian ISIS-related actors here in the country who have been arrested by the FBI for plotting an election day attack where they were strictly ordered to purchase 2 AK-47s and take their accomplice to go attack a large gathering on election day. And that person was caught and arrested. But is that the only person you think that would have an Iranian handler that's working with ISIS to try to cause disruption here in the U.S., right? So of course not. I mean, we would be silly to think that there'd only be one person in the entire country that they had access to and was willing to actually plot such an attack. So I understand that. I guess this is what analysts are saying is the biggest threat. I'm a little more concerned about, I don't know, actual foreign terrorists that want us all to die. So that is something that you have to keep in mind. Yes, all these things are being put into place, but for what reason and for who is a little bit questionable, it would seem. So, man, more super chats coming in. You guys are amazing. Let's see here. Red Dawn Readiness, good to see you. Glad you're here. I know that you host live streams as well. So if you guys enjoy, Minuteman style conversations and things of that nature, check out Red Dawn Readiness channel because they do a lot of that kind of stuff over there. Mike H, thank you so much for the $100. That's out of control, generous of you, and I really appreciate it. Top preps for jalapeno MRE cheese. Well, the one thing I will say about that I can agree with you with is that staying regular during an emergency is important. And if you can find something that will guarantee you'll use the bathroom, it may become very valuable. So 100% there. I know some people say it does the opposite for them, but in my experience, it does the other thing. Let's see. Silent Guard, $2. Thank you so much. South Korea reported NK missiles in the Eastern Sea. Okay, I haven't seen that yet, but we are going to talk about North Korea here later on in the chat when we're done talking about things that are happening here domestically. So Wow, you guys are amazing. Really, really do appreciate it. More Cookie Monster coming in. I really appreciate that as well. Uh, Pepe, these nuts. Anyone hear anything about Trump's second assassin? Yep, me too. You're right. No one has completely left the news media. Who knows if they're even okay or in jail or anything. Blaze and Blaze says 3x5, dude. I am trying my best here. The audio is struggling tonight, and I'm using everything I usually use, so I'm a little confused by it. If you guys, if everything still sounds good, please let me know. I'm willing to try to make it better if possible, but I have made some changes already that seem to be as good as it gets in a way, right? So let's go ahead and move on to this little story here that I thought was interesting. That's from a local news agency. Okay, so this is from Hartford, Connecticut. Security measures up for Election Day in Connecticut. Several security measures are in place to keep voting safe on Tuesday. There's one you can't even see. And I still don't, 3x5 at best is what Lays and Blade says. Now, sound much better than it was, albeit not 100% since Harbor Prepper. Okay. Try my best here. Not sure what the cause is, but I am what I am, I guess, tonight. Sound is getting poor again. Oh, man. Maybe my microphone is going out. It would be an issue for me. But it looks like it's supposed to be good. So let's just turn it down a little bit, see if that helps. Maybe this is better. Maybe I'm just peaking because I talk very loudly. So let's try that. Now, this is interesting to me because, oh, I'm having sound problems because of the video I did earlier. Thank you, Pure Blood. That might be true. Fire suppressors were distributed to each town and city to install inside ballot drop boxes over the past few days. The Connecticut Secretary of State announced this change after ballot boxes in Washington and Oregon were set on fire last week, burning hundreds of ballots. This is all a part of our effort to keep people feeling comfortable in the system and recognizing an election in Connecticut is a safe election, said Brenda Bergeron, the Deputy Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. Bergeron also oversees the Connecticut Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. Bergeron said there isn't a credible ballot fire threat in Connecticut, so the fire suppressors are a proactive measure. We help to give people the peace of mind so that people know the system is safe and they're safe to go or when they go to the polls. The State Emergency Operations Center will also be monitoring safety concerns on Tuesday, in addition to watching the more than 100 brush fires burning across the state. Hey, this is odd, but this is what they're doing. And it should tell you that these threats are real. People are actually concerned about it. But I also wonder if having a fire suppression system inside of a ballot box could create its own issues. I mean, if it does go off, what's the state of the ballots thereafter? You know, I'm assuming they're using some sort of a solid powder or something along those lines in order to avoid damaging the ballots. But how do we know that's going to work as well, right? So, like, it seems odd, but I guess they're taking measures. It just goes to show you what the environment is right now. So, man, everybody is ripping peanut right now, and that whole thing is very sad. Let's be honest. But regardless of the sad aspect of it, what it was a good demonstration of for people who needed that wake up call to some degree is that that was another example of government overreach and bureaucracies exerting their power over the common man and doing something atrocious that was at least this time documented and well detailed for the American people to see. And we need more people to wake up to these types of things. I did see some people saying interesting things though, like, "Hey, I understand why you're upset about this. I think it's reasonable to be upset about it." And then people were like, "But let me introduce you to Ruby Rich," right? So like this is a theme that's gone on for quite some time, but it's a reminder that that's how these people will act. They will just do things like they don't have any remorse when it comes to enforcing the law or following orders in many ways, depending on who they are, right? And New York, especially, uh, I assume, very uh, guilty of such behavior in many ways. So let's see here. Let's go over here. Opinions on what to carry tomorrow. Paradise Arms, that is going to be up to you because I don't know your local laws, your jurisdiction, or anything along those lines. But hey, you know, like in my state, it's not an issue, but in some states, it is an issue. It depends on what your state says when you can legally carry at a polling station or not. But also, something that would be interesting is that technically, I think in most places, besides maybe like New York or some of these other states, so obviously check your laws, but you could wear body armor, right? Especially concealable body armor that no one would know you had on anyway. That would be reasonable. I think wearing overt body armor would be silly, and I wouldn't do that. But if you felt the need to wear a level 3A plate inside of like an undercover shirt and then wear a button-up shirt over it, I mean, I don't see any harm in that. So let's talk about some other things happening. Minnesota, also very concerned about what's going on here. So, election security measures and curveball training in Minnesota nation put to the test. Right? Minnesota's top election security official said Monday the state is aware of election disinformation campaigns. Now, this is where you start having to read between the lines and speculating a little bit, right? Hey, what's the concern here, and what exactly do they mean by this, right? So think about that as we move through this story. Also, as you can see, I've been possibly looking at holsters online, and if you have any good recommendations for a leather holster for a P226 with an X300 turbo, let me know. Okay, Minnesota's top, or hold on, Bill Ekblad, the election security navigator in the Office of the Secretary of State, said he works closely with federal agencies, the FBI, and a federal Department of Homeland Security office called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security CISA, to monitor disruptions. Both have made public statements that both foreign and domestic bad actors are committed to disrupt the American election, Ekblad said. We are not currently aware of any specific credible threats to Minnesota elections. We do believe that the preparations done by Minnesota County and municipal elections officials and the teams that support them have them ready for whatever might come. Ekblad said that includes training on what to look for and how to respond, report, and ask for help. He said. Certainly, the topic of cybersecurity as it relates to elections is not new. It's probably the most mature threat systems that we have been paying attention to, going back to the 2016 presidential election. But the most dominant form is misinformation. That's the softer side of cybersecurity, he said. Specific threats to election networks do still happen. But when we think about threats to this election, it is primarily mis and disinformation, he said. We know that the next few days will be a test of all that we and our local partners have put into election security the past few years. There are likely to be curveballs, surprises, and things we didn't see coming, he said, but he expressed confidence in a safe and secure election in the state. Listen, their biggest concern from cyber security standpoint is misinformation. And the person who determines what's misinformation is just that, the person who determines it. Freedom of speech doesn't require you to tell the truth, right? So it's our job as Americans and as educated people to a degree, I assume. I mean, maybe not at all, but even then, I'm sure you can be capable of critical thought. It's our job to take information and vet it and understand whether or not it has any credibility or validity, and then do additional research in case it's something important and find out whether or not there's any truth to it. And then if we can go to that level with any information we receive, there's a good chance we can verify whether or not it is true or false. That's our job to do. It's not everyone else's job to do. Now, journalism used to be a good way of trying to get past that point without having to do the work yourself. But unfortunately, we know that the major media outlets have become very biased and very opinionated and are willing to put out things that aren't necessarily true in order to push an agenda. So it's our job, not the election officials' jobs, not the media's job, not anyone else's job to decide what's true or not anymore. And unfortunately, these people saying that tells you a lot of what you already need to know, because they're going to say that anybody questioning anything or talking about like basic issues that are going on with the voting process or who knows what else are going to be guilty of misinformation. And that is unfortunately something they're going to try to leverage for the next few months. 100% guarantee you on that. So keep that in mind. Part of the physical security for polling places is to enforce state law on who can be within 100 feet of the entrance of polling places. Those are voters, election officials, news media, party challengers, and any employees of the entity where the poll is located, such as a school or church. Listen, how does that get enforced? Anyone can just get in line and just be like, yeah, I'm voting. Like, what? I don't understand what the purpose of that whole thing is. But anyway, it is now a crime to interfere or attempt to intimidate elections officials or election workers. That was one of the many changes to election law passed in the last two sessions of the legislature. Now, keep this in mind, because what they've done with that law is made it a crime to interfere or attempt to intimidate elections officials. But that requires the election official to claim that that's what's happening. So if we find ourselves in these situations where that threat report we talked about in the last live stream, remember that? Um, Basically, it specifically said that one of their biggest threats to election integrity in this country right now are the poll workers themselves, people who have access to the ballots, people who have access to the machines, people who have access to the influential to the voting base, right? So if somebody gets upset about somebody, whether or not it's behavioral, whether or not it's how they look or whatever else, right? There, this creates an easy pathway to remove that person from the situation criminally, right? And I'm saying that in such a way in order to not spell it out so obviously and create a scenario that somebody might look into too far and it not be exactly true in that sense. But you understand what I'm trying to say, how this can be leveraged for those who, let's just say, become protective of their environment. So all this stuff is happening. But clearly, Minnesota, especially, is worried about misinformation more than all of the cybersecurity issues that are happening right now. And so here is just a quick example of that to give you an idea of like what you might see happening here very soon, especially when I don't know certain aspects of the government are very important to actually tallying or certifying certain election results and everything else, right? So this just happened in Washington, in case you weren't aware. Washington courts online systems down after unauthorized activity. Now, this is a real cybersecurity threat, especially surrounding the election, right? If people can get into our court system and shut it down or manipulate it or who knows what else do they have the capacity to do? And yet they're concerned about misinformation when this is actually happening right now. Like this story is from today, November 4th. Okay. So Washington state courts online systems were down Monday after state officials said they detected unauthorized activity on the electronic network. The court's administrative office is working to restore the systems and determine how the network has been impacted, said Wendy Farrell, Associate Director for the State Administrative Office of the Courts. In an email Monday, Farrell said she could not provide details about the outage for security reasons, but said state court officials have no reason to believe that was a targeted attack. Although, for some reason, they're reporting it as being unauthorized access that caused the outage. So I don't know what that means otherwise, but you tell me. In an abundance of caution, we proactively took down our systems to secure them and are working around the clock with leading experts to restore services as quickly as possible. So even if it's just out of an abundance of caution, having to take down your systems so you can properly secure them is a little inconvenient during an election, especially if the courts have to come in and step in for any issues that are occurring during that time. Right? We see all kinds of cases being filed where there's voter suppression or where laws are being broken regarding closing polls early or who knows what else. So please keep this in mind. Like this is a legitimate security threat. This is not just misinformation, right? The outage is affecting all state court websites, their judicial information systems, and associated services, Farrell said. Officials have not said when they expect the network to be restored. They can't even tell them how fast they can get things back up and running. Pierce County District Court officials said they would operate with limited services until further notice. In a news release Monday, potential hearings and probation appointments will continue, but other hearings and some ongoing trials could be affected, according to the release from the court, which typically handles cases such as probation and traffic infractions. Pierce County Superior Court expects minimal disruption and will operate as normal, it said in a news release. Okay, so just to demonstrate, there are real cybersecurity threats. We already knew about them. We've talked about them many times here on this channel. And for some reason, some of our state officials, as well as the federal government, seems to be more concerned about the fact that you might go on X and post, oh, this didn't work the way I thought it was supposed to, and it's all BS. And now, guess what? That's misinformation, and that's the real threat. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here in the chat for a minute. You know that there's awesome people here tonight. Let's see here. Global News Wars says media, nah. Motivator says media divided this country. Exactly. Our country is actually divided over morals. Well, there is some truth to that, the Watchman. I definitely agree with you there. When people had more of a shared system of morals, it was a little bit easier to get along. That's just, unfortunately, how humanity works. Let's see here. Hunter Seth, it just gets worse and worse. Well, we'll see what happens. How's the weather, MP? It's starting to get cold, but we still need rain or snow or whatever. so bad. It's still extremely dry. The fire risk is still high. It's crazy, actually. So now the FBI also monitoring threats. Who would have assumed, right? FBI monitoring election threats ahead of election day. Okay. Election day is Tuesday, and with millions of Americans casting their votes, the FBI is ramping up election security. This operation is going to run 24/7 for the national election week. FBI Deputy Assistant Director James Barnacle. Barnacle says the purpose of the command post is to ensure the FBI is ready to respond. The FBI is looking at all those threats that come in here in the command post. We're triaging that information. Barnacle says the command post is already taking action. So we've had information coming into the FBI in the last few days. Some of it has been maybe state or local matters, but we're just making sure it gets to state local officials, Barnacle said. I don't think Barnacle speaks very grammatically. Election interference is already popping up in the form of fake videos on social media. Russia, China, and Iran are seeking to influence U.S. government policy and politics for their benefit, Barnacle said. Intelligence officials also warned that Russia and Iran could encourage violent protests in the U.S. following the election. Around the nation, approximately 60 National Guardsmen from 6 states have been activated by their state governors, and state active duty status for election support, with roughly another 600 Guardsmen from 17 states on standby if needed, Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Patrick S. Ryder said. The nation's capital is gearing up defenses and businesses are boarding up just in case. Keep this in mind, 60 Guardsmen from 6 states and another 600 on standby. I mean, look, I don't feel we should need the National Guard for anything per se, but if something does happen, that's not very many National Guardsmen. I'm pretty sure that's like 0. So, I don't know. You tell me your thoughts on that, but I'm not feeling super confident in the idea that 660 National Guardsmen could actually quell really anything. But that's just me. So, and I'm still hoping the sound is better. I think we're getting there, but I appreciate everyone's patience tonight with all of the audio issues. So, let's see here. Crank it up a little bit more. There we go. Now, they want conflict. Well, Dean, you might be right. It's just kind of how things work lately, isn't it? So, let me get back in the chat for a second. Dustin Pribble. And remember, they can use lethal force without clearance for 72 hours. Well, and the other thing about that, too, Dustin, which, I'm not disagreeing with you by any means, but the other thing about that is something people tend to forget is that they can just use lethal force whenever they want, right? Just because legally they're not supposed to doesn't mean they won't in the immediacy of a situation and then just deal with the ramifications thereafter, right? I mean, that's how it works with humanity in general. Like, we're not supposed to do violent things, but if something crazy happens right in front of our face, we might react in such a way that might not be legal, right? And that's applies to the military, police, everyone. So although the law is there to keep things from escalating to a certain degree, all it really provides is ramifications. It doesn't necessarily provide protection, right? And dealing with court after you've been shot during a situation doesn't really help you very much, does it? So keep that in mind. Okay. Now, see people, Tyler Carson doesn't like Robert apparently. So I don't know what any of that's about, but I find it interesting. So, let's see here. Little Scialism is talking about Bigfoot in a strange way, which I somehow caught out of all the chats tonight, so I appreciated that. Let's see here. Oh, hello, Rhonda Pagan. Good to see you. I heard that some of the National Guard was sent to assist the wars in Israel and Ukraine. Yeah, I believe there was a deployment out that way, but I'm not sure in what capacity, to be honest with you, off the top of my head, so keep that in mind. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the post-election. Now, this is the time period that I think is going to be even more tumultuous. I think that this has the capacity to be filled with unrest and quite high in the sense of a danger risk environment. Let's talk about it a little bit, okay? And just wanted to throw that out there one more time. Are we still good in the sense of audio? Have things improved at all? Okay? Mr. Fix, or I can't read it all apparently tonight. MX Fight 705, is there really only 9 likes? I don't think so, but if that's true, if you guys don't mind giving me a like and maybe subscribing if you like this information, that would be really helpful. I appreciate it, and I never say so. I just said so. All right, the post-election threats you need to prepare for, according to the experts. This is from Cyberscoop. So I always find articles interesting when they put you need to prepare for in the title, because I think that's at least indicative of information related to something you can actually use as actionable intelligence, right? Things that we can actually do something about or prepare for at the very minimum mentally. So let's talk about it, okay? After weeks of early voting, voters on Tuesday will head to the polls across the country to determine the next president of the United States. But federal agencies, state and local election officials, and experts say that while American voters will ultimately choose the next chief executive, they are preparing for a chaotic, disruptive, and messy post-election period. One where foreign nations, domestic political groups, and other bad actors will attempt to take advantage of a deeply divided electorate during a uniquely vulnerable time in America's electoral cycle. Last cycle, driven primarily by supporters of then-President Donald Trump, the period between November 5th and inauguration on January 20th was subjected to a torrent of lies and this and all that, right? We know the story there. They have to bring it up every single time. This year, Cyberscoop canvassed a wide range of officials, experts, and observers about the scenarios they are most concerned about this period and why. Their responses make it clear that states and election officials will have to navigate a wide range of threats to the integrity of the election after voters have had their say. An important note, while the degrees of confidence varied, most officials Cyberscoop spoke with expressed the view that despite risks and challenges, the American public should feel confident that their votes will be accurately counted in the upcoming elections and officials will be able to determine the winner. We will see, time will tell. Okay? Social media networks and other sources are already riddled with false claims about election irregularities, partisan voter suppression efforts, and looming mass voter fraud. While experts expect a steady stream of this content over the next 2 months, there are 5 dates that the election watchers have flagged as pressure points where efforts to deceive and disrupt will be most intense. Each one of these dates represents a key procedural step necessary to transfer power from one presidential administration to the next. And as 2020 demonstrated, they can be focal points for bad actors and disinformation campaigns. So these are the dates that they say you should be aware of. And I think that it's good. If you guys want, I'll share the article in the live chat right now just to give it to you for your own personal resources if you'd like to have these dates on hand in case it's something you want to monitor. Okay. So first, Tuesday, November 5th. The first is Election Day on November 5th. Intelligence agencies have said to expect rising instances of false content about election irregularities, something that has been borne out repeatedly in the past week. As some states report election results sooner than others, the first few weeks after November 5th could create a waiting period ripe for disinformation actors. Wednesday, December 11th. An update to the Electoral Count Act in 2022 created a December 11th deadline for all 50 states to file a certificate of ascertainment, putting forth slates of electors. Nicole Schneidman, a technology public policy strategist at the nonprofit Protect Democracy, called out the week prior as potentially a high-risk period where we may see again attempts by county or state officials to refuse to certify election results. Tuesday, December 17th. States will convene the Electoral College. This will be done at state capitals across the country, making them a potential target for protests, disruptions, and violence. Monday, January 6th. Congress certifies election results. For the first time, the Department of Homeland Security has designated this day as a national special security event, something that allows for significant resources from federal government as well as from the state and local partners to be utilized in a comprehensive security plan, according to the U.S. Secret Service. Monday, January 20th, Inauguration Day, when the president will be sworn in. Already designated a national special security event, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser said she and other local officials, as well as local law enforcement, will be operating out of a new joint command center with federal and local partners throughout election week and beyond to respond to security concerns facing the inauguration. So, just to reiterate, these are the dates they're telling us you should at least consider to be high risk, okay? Tuesday, November 5th, Wednesday, December 11th, Tuesday, December 17th, Monday, January 6th, and Monday, January 20th, okay? I hope that gives you at least kind of some level of strategy surrounding the calendar of events that's occurring during this time period. And one thing I want to mention, okay? There's more to this, by the way. But one thing I want to mention is that obviously they continually bring up January 6th, right? We all know what happened there. We all know the deal, right? Okay. Please keep in mind that either side can attempt to do something similar, right? And so just because one side wins and the other doesn't mean you won't find the exact same level of disruption around that time, and doesn't mean that certain results might not be certified by those who have the power to say yes or no to them at this point in time. So please be aware that this is a very contentious period, and this is going to be a bumpy ride, at least in my opinion. I live very rural. I live in North Dakota. The likelihood of me encountering massive unrest or anything like that isn't very high, but small communities have other things to consider. Rising crime rates, excessive violent crime that overwhelms small police forces, and the fact that we have gangs and drug problems and everything else that might explode during a time of chaos and unrest when everybody else is looking the other way, right? So keep this all in mind. Now, there's some other good stuff here too, but social media is the one that they talk about a lot, and I find some problems with it because it takes away your ability to say things you need to say or to share information you need to share. Social media platforms like Facebook, Telegram, X, and others were central to planning an organization of pro-Trump supporters leading up to January 6th. While the attack on the Capitol led companies to temporarily ban Trump's account and rigorously moderate content, casting doubt on election results, those efforts have diminished considerably over the past 4 years. Companies like Meta have cut trust and safety staff and ended collaborations with independent researchers on election impacts. A report by Meta's oversight board found most threats to election officials on their platform were not removed, being considered free speech. We recommend that during a period of heightened risk of violence, such messages should not be protected under the guise of the right to protest, the board wrote. Meanwhile, X has been transformed into a content moderation free-for-all. As disinformation experts say, new owner Elon Musk has sought to use the platform's algorithm to help elect Trump. For Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat California, a progressive member of Congress who was at the Capitol on that day, his biggest fear is that social media tools are used in the way they were used for January 6th. Now, regardless of the outcome of that day and regardless of what happened about that time that they're speaking of, I want you to keep in mind that the only reason that the founding fathers of this nation were capable of betraying the British, basically, right? I mean, that's what happened. And beginning the plans for an insurrection, right? And a revolution. The only way they were able to do that was by meeting in taverns and networking and communicating in a way that didn't have the involvement of their overlords. And there are those who are in Congress and those who are in our government who don't like the idea of that. So they would like to see these types of examples be used as a justification for removing your ability to share information online or to consume information online. I'm somebody that they don't want just being able to tell you things because I'm not vetted. I'm not verified. Well, it depends on who you ask, because half the people who watch my channel assume I'm a Fed. So if that's true, then I guess I am vetted and verified. But unfortunately, still have no word on that pension or any of those sweet, sweet government benefits. So I guess I'll just keep doing this instead. But regardless, they don't like people organizing. And of course, they'll never mention that these same platforms were used to organize the Black Lives Matter protests throughout the country that obviously caused billions of dollars of damage and created havoc and chaos in the streets of America throughout the country. Those same platforms were used for that as well, but their example is never going to be that. So they just don't like people being able to organize in general, but they're always going to lay blame at the feet of those that have the most distrust for them, right? So that is very clear, all right? Now, we're also talking about fake media to stoke real anger, aka using, AI-generated imagery or whatever else it might be to try to instigate something from somebody who might be easily radicalized or easily pushed over the edge. There's lots of stuff in here. I think it's good to read over, but the thing I really wanted to touch on was the list of dates that people really should consider as being inflection points, and that gives you something to work with when it comes to planning. So, all right, now, we are going to talk about some escalations in other parts of the world and the strange timing surrounding them, but also the fact that this is just a trajectory we're on. And I don't want to say I don't want to say that it's not savable, right? But a big part of why I put that video out earlier today, and a big part of my opinion and the way I developed my thought process for presenting that information, is the fact that I don't want us to be involved in a World War III, right? I feel like I don't. I believe we are currently. But what I mean by that is publicly recognized Congress declares war World War III, right? And I don't want nuclear war. I don't want escalation in the Middle East or in Eastern Europe or in the Korean Peninsula or any of these places. And I can't see how we don't have more of that if we keep doing what we're doing right now. As a prepper, my goal isn't to use all my preps. My goal isn't to survive a disaster. My goal is to eliminate suffering for my family, if at all possible, regardless of the environment. And if I can avoid an environment of nuclear fallout or, I don't know, military action or anything else related to war, then that's what I would like to avoid. And unfortunately, I don't see us avoiding that with the way things keep escalating every single day, it seems, at this point. So, regardless of how you feel about every single aspect of our political system or anything else along those lines, I would like us to try something else if what we're doing right now guarantees that those things are going to come to pass. So, let's talk about some of that. We just had a almost like a historic moment, I guess you could call it, but who cares anymore because we're also desensitized to these wars that are happening and all the escalations around them. But this is from November 3rd, a story from yesterday. B-52 bombers deployed to Middle East to deter Iran. More F-15E fighters to come. U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress bombers have arrived in the Middle East to deter Iran and its proxies, the U.S. military announced on November 3rd. It is the first time that B-52s have deployed to a base in the region since 2019. The U.S. is deploying a total of 6 B-52s, an additional squadron of F-15E Strike Eagles, and more aerial refueling tankers to support those aircraft, U.S. officials told Air and Space Forces magazine. The fresh air power is designed to compensate for the upcoming departure of the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, U.S. officials said. It also comes as senior Iranian officials have threatened to attack Israel, following Israel's retaliatory airstrikes on Iranian air defenses and ballistic missile production sites on October 26th. These movements demonstrate the flexible nature of the U.S. global defense posture and U.S. capability to deploy worldwide on short notice to meet evolving national security threats, Pentagon Press Secretary Air Force Major General Patrick S. Ryder said in a November 1st statement. The U.S. military did not say where the B-52s, which are from the 5th Bomber Wing at Minot Air Base, North Dakota, will be based in the region, but cargo aircraft originating in Minot have arrived at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar, in recent days. Al Udeid is the largest U.S. base in the Middle East and has previously hosted B-52s. So, this is after we already sent troops to Israel to support the THAAD systems that we also sent to Israel. There's a lot of buildup going on here and a lot of strategic positioning occurring. That conflict is going to keep growing unless something drastic happens. And right now, we already know Iran is threatening to attack Israel once again with advanced weaponry that no one has seen before, apparently. And Israel is likely to keep doing more as well, because I don't believe they've actually retaliated for the supposed assassination attempt on Netanyahu. So that whole thing is continually growing, and we are continually pushing it. And if there's one thing you can count on the U.S. to do when it comes to the military-industrial complex and the war hawk politicians that are currently in office, especially the Lindsey Grahams of the world, you can count on them to want to start a war in the Middle East. They want Iran's resources. They want access to the Middle East without any pushback. They will go to war with Iran if they can, by any means necessary. And the craziest part about it is that if someone went up to one of these people right now and said, hey, if you say yes right now and we'll literally just go start bombing Iran, they would just say yes. And that's insane to me as somebody who wants to avoid war and doesn't want to see innocent lives lost if at all necessary. So that's where we're at, though, okay? Now, war isn't cool. Sometimes it's necessary, says Kieran. I agree with that 100%. And I'm not a pacifist by any means, so don't misconstrue that. But I am somebody who understands that there are people who have personal interests in getting us involved in wars that you and I will have to fund that doesn't actually benefit us by any means, right? And American lives will be lost for what would appear to be nothing, but we'll never see the benefits of those fat pockets being stuffed by people on the inside, right? So let's also talk about what's happening in Eastern Europe, because this is getting out of control as well. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there has been a video released recently that kind of demonstrated how much land has been lost by Ukraine over the last few months. And it is actually pretty devastating seeing how far Russia has advanced over that time. And my understanding, and this is just me, so maybe I'm off on this, but my understanding is that Russia has pretty much handled the Kursk situation, but hasn't necessarily cleared everything out, but that operation is not sustainable. So that's what I understand currently, but I may be wrong, like I said, okay? Now, I'm not going to play this video because that'll cause problems on this platform, unfortunately, because people, well, they like to submit strikes sometimes. So, Ukraine-Russia latest. North Korea soldiers in Russia targeted by Ukrainian fire for the first time, Kiev says. This was updated 15 minutes ago. It was put out 3 hours ago, and this is from The Independent, okay? North Korean troops have been hit by Ukraine's army for the first time since they entered the war on Russia's side, Kiev has said. Andriy Kovalenko, an official with Ukraine's National Security Council, reported that the incident took place in Russia's western Kursk region. Ukrainian forces have held parts of this area since their unexpected cross-border operation in August. The initial North Korean troops have already encountered fire in the Kursk region, Kovalenko said, though he did not provide additional details. His remarks are likely to heighten the concerns that North Korea's involvement could draw other nations into the conflict, which has already become Europe's largest war since 1945. Pyongyang has vowed to back Russia until it achieves victory over Ukraine. Our traditional, historically friendly relations have traveled the tested path of history today, are rising to a new level of relations of invincible military comradeship, the North's Foreign Minister Cho Sun-hui said during her trip to Moscow last week. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken confirmed there are 10,000 North Koreans already in Russia, including as many as 8,000 in the Kursk region. So, at this point in time, North Korean troops have died in Russia at the hands of Ukrainians. Like this war is a lot. A lot is happening. And it has escalated and it has expanded and it has involved more countries than you would have expected. So, here we are. I don't know what to say about how calm everything is right now. But I'm not sure I like it. And I do like it being calm because I like the fact that nothing bad is happening. But I don't like the calm before the storm when I don't know what the storm is going to be. And that makes me very concerned because I don't necessarily have a lot of faith that things are just going to go smoothly, right? And I think a lot of you probably feel that too. So, I hope you all understand tomorrow's the day, right? And please, if you haven't watched the video I put out earlier today, people are claiming it's clickbait. It's not, but because it's factually true what I say in the video, and I explained myself quite well, I thought. But regardless, yes, is it a little bit of a subversion? Sure, but that is, subverting expectations is how you can get a message out further. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind, and this is something that I think strategically I can share with you all because, well, I like you. And I also don't mind sharing some strategic concepts when it comes to how to operate on certain platforms. But understand that where we are right now, and with the current platform we're operating on, the reach by a video that talks about not supporting a certain person is going to be far greater than the opposite would achieve because of certain levels of bias, right? So more than anything, I wanted to get that message out, and I wanted to make people aware of my journey through a lot of this political environment stuff when it comes to like where I began and where I am now, but also to explain my feelings of disenfranchisement for a period of time, and finally realizing how I got there, and maybe that there was some malicious intent behind those feelings being presented to me in such a way, if that makes sense. So, and man, I never meant to try to be someone who would be considered articulate, but I do seem to be able to gather my thoughts in such a way and then present them in a manner that people relate to. And I guess I am very fortunate to be able to have that gift, which I thank God for, because it's something that I've had my entire life. And I remember my mother, and I'll just tell you this quick little backstory, because I guess that's what I'm doing today. But my mom, growing up my whole life, we went to church, and she always said, I don't know what it is, Matthew, but I think, and yes, that's my name, Matthew, Matt, right? Not Mattis Yahoo, like some people like to assume, I guess, but regardless. So basically, she always said, Matthew, I foresee you being like a pastor one day, because you have a gift of using your words and you are good at sharing a message. And she basically assumed I would be good at giving a sermon, I guess, right? But that's not what turned out to be the case. I'm not a pastor, and that's not my goal in life. But I will say that I'm hoping to have used some of those gifts to help other people, maybe not better themselves per se, but prepare and be more prepared for whatever may come, so that we can all survive together as a community. And if that's what I've done, then I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty proud of it, because I feel like maybe at some point I might have helped somebody, right? And I needed the help just as much, and I was provided it by many other great people out there who do what I do. So if anything, I was just trying to return the favor. But that's where I'm at. That's just a little anecdote I wanted to share, because maybe my mom was onto something, right? So you guys are amazing. Little stylism, but your mom also said you weren't ugly. Well, yeah, exactly. She's a very smart woman, and so luckily never lied to me once. You guys have a great night. It is going to be the private live stream. We are going to talk to some great people in the chat tonight. So if you want to join the private live stream, you either need to hit the join button down below and become a channel member. And the link for channel members will be on my channel page on the community tab. And you'll see the post there with the link to the video. Or if you're a Subscribestar member, you will also have access to the live stream tonight on Subscribestar's main page. You should be able to have the link there as well. I just put the Subscribestar in the chat. And just so everyone's aware, I don't hide information behind the private live streams. There's no paywall to getting preparedness-related info here on this channel. The private live streams are a casual chat format where it's basically my way of saying thank you to people who wanted to directly support the channel financially, and I wanted to give them something back for that appreciation. So I hope that makes sense. Stealth Mode just became a channel member. Great appreciation there. I really can't say enough to everybody who does these things. The Range, thank you for the super chat earlier. Great video earlier, Magic on Point. Well, I appreciate that sentiment. And I just want you all to know that tomorrow, get out there, do what you need to do, make the decisions that work best for you. But also, if you do go vote, which I plan on doing, be prepared and be very situationally aware of your surroundings, because we never know what's going to happen, and anything could happen in a year like this. So, you guys have a great night. I will see you again next week.